From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
No, I know they were not physically fighting at the time that gun went off when we heard the shot and the kid hit the ground.
The Trayvon Martin tapes, hundreds of newly released audio recordings, photos, and once secret police documents raise new questions about the night George Zimmerman fatally shot Trayvon Martin. The police say his death was ultimately avoidable if Zimmerman had not approached him. We'll speak with NAACP President Ben Jealous and play a chilling recording of Trayvon Martin's girlfriend describing his last moments alive.
He said the man found him again, behind him. I said, run. You gonna run? He said, you're not gonna run, because I couldn't know he not gonna run because he out of breath. He told me, said this kid died getting close to him. I told him, run. I told him, keep running.
Then the secret U.S. drug war inside Honduras. 4 Honduran civilians, including 2 pregnant women, died last week after they were attacked by a U.S.-owned helicopter. The State Department's facing questions over its claim the U.S. agents on board were acting solely as advisors.
Well, does that mean that they advised them to open fire on a canoe carrying civilians with a pregnant woman? And
well, I highly...
well, I don't see that they are in an advice and support role. So what did they advise and support? Did they, did they say, hey, this looks like a good target, shoot it?
But first, leaders from the G8 are gathering today at the isolated and heavily guarded Camp David. We'll speak with the head of Oxfam America about the G8, how it has failed to address global poverty and hunger. We'll also get a report on the Occupy G8 People's Summit. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Florida prosecutors have released a trove of documents revealing new details about the night George Zimmerman fatally shot Trayvon Martin in Sanford, Florida. The evidence indicates a fight occurred between the two, but police determined the deadly encounter was, quote, ultimately avoidable if Zimmerman had remained in his vehicle and awaited the arrival of law enforcement. The police also concluded, quote, there is no indication Trayvon Martin was involved in any criminal activity at the time of the encounter. Autopsy results show Martin died from a single gunshot wound to the chest with a bullet going through his heart. The new documents also show Sanford police received an anonymous tip less than 2 full days after the shooting, before it became widely known to the public. The caller refused to identify herself, but said Zimmerman, quote, has racist ideologies and is fully capable of instigating a confrontation that could have escalated to the point of him having used deadly force. The caller was never tracked down. We'll have more on the Trayvon Martin case later in the broadcast. We'll speak with the president of the NAACP, Ben Jealous, in Florida. Hundreds of people rallied in Houston Thursday to protest the acquittal of a former police officer in the videotaped beating of an African-American teenager. On Wednesday, the officer, Andrew Bloomberg, was found not guilty by an all-white jury in the beating and stomping of 15-year-old burglary suspect Chad Holly. Video taken of the March 2010 incident shows Holly being stopped by a police vehicle. After Holly falls to the ground, he's clearly seen surrendering and putting his hands behind his head. But instead of placing him in handcuffs, Bloomberg and 6 fellow officers proceed to attack Holly with stomps and kicks. Bloomberg and the other officers lost their jobs after the video emerged. 3 of the officers will learn of their trial dates next week. The U.S. has issued what could be its most forceful threat to date of a potential attack on Iran. Speaking at a public event in Jerusalem, the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Dan Shapiro, said the Obama administration's made preparations for military action. Shapiro said the U.S. would prefer a peaceful resolution to the standoff over Iran's nuclear activities, but he added, quote, that doesn't mean that the military option is not fully available, and not just available, but it's ready. The necessary planning's been done to ensure that it's ready, unquote. The Obama administration, meanwhile, granted an Israeli request for an additional $70 million to fund a so-called missile defense program known as Iron Dome. On Thursday, Defense Secretary Leon Panetta said the Pentagon will request the funding over the next 3 years. The money would come on top of more than $200 million already allocated for the system and the additional $3 billion in annual U.S. military aid. Republicans say the U.S. funding for Iron Dome doesn't go far enough and are advancing a measure that would give Israel an additional $680 million. Speaking at a meeting with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Washington, Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak thanked the White House for its support.
I'm delighted to be here once again and to have an opportunity to discuss Middle Eastern issues with the Secretary. We are here, I was in the Pentagon, and we are highly appreciative of the approach of this administration, of the Secretary of Defense, and of course of the President in regard to the security of Israel, making sure that in our tough neighborhood, Israel will be strong and secure.
Israel, meanwhile, has launched new attacks on the occupied Gaza Strip. On Thursday, 7 Palestinians were wounded after Israeli forces opened fire near the Israel-Gaza border. At least 3 of the victims were said to be farmers. Another Palestinian farmer said he fled the shooting.
And we left our tools behind us. We also left our donkeys and cars to the east from here. Suddenly, the Israelis started to shoot on us, so we ran away.
An Egyptian court has acquitted 14 police officers charged with killing protesters during the uprising against the regime of Hosni Mubarak last year. The officers were accused of firing on demonstrators outside of police stations in the early stages of the protests. So far, 9 out of 10 cases where Egyptian officers have been tried for killing protesters have ended in acquittals. The 10th case ended in a suspended sentence. The Obama administration continues to ease restrictions on Burma in the aftermath of parliamentary elections and the release of political prisoners. On Thursday, the U.S. said it'll name its first ambassador to Burma in 20 years. Speaking in Washington, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also announced the U.S. will ease the ban on trading and other investments in Burma.
I am also announcing new steps to permit American investment in the country and export of U.S. financial services. These are the most significant adjustments to our previous policy that have been taken to date. The United States will issue a general license that will enable American businesses to invest across the economy, allow citizens access to international credit markets and dollar-based transactions. So today, we say to American business, invest in Burma and do it responsibly. Be an agent of positive change.
Events and marches were held across the globe Thursday to mark the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. Countries to take part included Cuba, which has recently taken steps to account for the persecution of LGBTQ people in the 60s and 70s. U.S. activist Anna Dorman was in Cuba to take part.
We're very happy and excited to be here. We're very impressed with how open the community is to both us and to discuss this theme, which we think is very important. We're here in solidarity with the people of Cienfuegos and the people of Cuba to really promote education and awareness and consciousness raising so that we reduce homophobia and increase openness to diversity.
The House has passed a Republican-backed version of a bill reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, a sweeping law that aids victims of domestic violence. But critics say the House version excludes protections for Native American and LGBT victims passed by the Senate and rolls back existing protections for immigrant women. The White House has threatened to veto the House version, saying it undermines the core purpose of the law. And the New York Times has revealed a Republican super PAC is planning an ad campaign that would revive the effort to link President Obama to his former pastor, the Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Sound bites of Wright's sermons became a dominant staple of the 2008 campaign when Republicans tried to associate Obama with Wright's denunciations of U.S. foreign policy and its record on civil rights. A newly disclosed plan shows strategists with the Ending Spending Action Fund writing, quote, "The world is about to see Jeremiah Wright and understand his influence on Barack Obama for the first time in a big, attention-arresting way," unquote. The $10 million plan was commissioned and funded by the billionaire Joe Ricketts, the founder of the brokerage firm TD Ameritrade. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our viewers and listeners around the country and around the world.